Oftentimes, people will try to flee the country after committing a crime. Fewer times, they get away with doing so. But how often does it occur with those who hold dual citizenship? Hayley Anderson was a young woman from Westbury, New York. She was the daughter of Karen and Gordon Anderson. She had a younger sister named Madeline. Her friends described her as hardworking, friendly, and supportive, energetic, and said that she had a great love for music. In March of 2018, she was in school at Binghamton University. By this point, she was 22 years old and a fifth-year senior, or super senior, as we called it when I was in school. She was attending Binghamton University and aiming towards a career in nursing. She was living off campus with two roommates. While studying, she also worked at a coffee shop on campus called Jasmine's, where she had been working for over 3 years. She was planning to graduate in just 2 months in May of 2018, and she already even had a job lined up at a Long Island emergency room. She was closer to her career than ever. Alongside her was a fellow student and associate of hers, whose name was Orlando Enrique Tercero Moreno. Let's please just call him Orlando. Orlando was born in Miami and grew up in Nicaragua. He held dual citizenship between Nicaragua and America. His father was a doctor, meaning his family was fairly well off. Taking after his dad, Orlando was a good student who decided to go into nursing himself. He was described as caring, respectful, and someone who could always get a laugh out of you. Orlando was 22 years old himself, and studying nursing at Binghamton University alongside Hayley. He worked hard during the weekdays, but loved to party on the weekends. Hayley and Orlando met during Hayley's 4th year of university. While Hayley was, quote, on a break during her previous relationship, she and Orlando crossed the line and ended up getting intimate. They ended up dating for a short period of time. They would go on to have an on-again, off-again relationship for about 1.5 years. While they were together, Hayley and Orlando seemed to fight pretty often, according to statements from Hayley and Orlando's friends. Orlando became more and more possessive and started hanging out near her home to keep an eye on her. Then one fateful night, Orlando stormed out of his apartment after having an argument with Hayley during a party. He was very angry over a possible relationship that she was having. He feared that she had gotten back together with her ex-boyfriend and officially ended their break. He shouted at Hayley in front of everyone, but they appeared to make up over some alcohol. Or so it seemed. Later on after that, Hayley went outside to find her tires had been slashed. She told the police that she figured Orlando must have been the one to do it, but she didn't press matters and declined to press charges against him. Despite being a major dick move, she worried that he may lose his scholarships over this and didn't want to end up ruining his life. She was kind like that. Even after that point, Orlando still wanted something more serious with Hayley, whereas she did not reciprocate. According to Hayley's friends, Orlando grew obsessed with her. For unknown reasons, Hayley let Orlando back into her life to some extent. However, after a while, she wanted to clearly end all romantic involvement with him, but she did want to remain friends. And then one night, the last night Hayley would ever be seen alive, she went out for a long night with friends. She had gotten fairly drunk and, of her own volition, went to Orlando's home to hang out with him in the early morning hours. She had been in contact with her friends, but the last text she responded to was at around 3:15 a.m. It's believed that Orlando flew into a jealous rage. Maybe it was something Hayley said. Maybe it was something he merely assumed, or maybe it was nothing at all. But Orlando ended up strangling her to death. It is likely that she was sleeping when he attacked her. It is firmly believed by most that he was motivated by pure jealousy, as she had moved on from him. About 7 hours later, after daybreak, a nearby security camera caught Orlando leaving his home and heading out to buy some sleeping medication, namely ZQuil and melatonin, which he soon returned back to his home with later. It's thought that he used these during an attempt to hang himself. However, in the attempt, he fell and hit his head, getting some of his blood on the floor. He left a note apologizing to his family, telling his mother, in Spanish, "Mom taught me life is a momentary thing. Nothing is ours. Mom, I'm sorry. I don't have any words." He also told his father that he would see him soon. His father had passed away a couple of years prior. These notes clearly showed his guilt. Orlando placed a worrying text to his sister, telling her that he was, quote, "sorry for everything." Fearing that he might try to hurt himself, the sister called the police and asked them to perform a welfare check on him. The police went over, but they didn't find anybody home. Nobody responsive, anyway. Orlando was already well on his way. He got in his car and drove out to the John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City. He attempted to catch a flight out to Miami, but he just barely missed it. Instead, he went all out and decided to fly to Nicaragua instead. His mother met him at the airport and picked him up. On the morning of March 9th of 2018, Hayley's friends got worried about her. They had been trying to contact her for days, but weren't able to get a hold of her, something very uncharacteristic of her. They used the Find My iPhone app and were able to trace her phone to Orlando's residence, something immediately alarming to them. Feeling justified in their suspicions, they broke a window and got into the apartment. They hoped to find a mundane answer to their concerns, but unfortunately that would not be the case. They found Hayley in Orlando's bed, partially tucked under the covers. They called 911 immediately, and the police came out for the second time that day. They made their way into the apartment, and they found Hayley's body at around 1 p.m. During their first sweep at the crime scene, the police found a blanket speckled with blood on the floor between the kitchen and the dining room. They found the blood evidence of Orlando hitting his head as well. They found a necktie hanging from a doorway by some hooks in the basement. Hayley's death was officially declared as a homicide just 1 day later. An autopsy was soon performed at Lourdes Hospital as well. The man performing the autopsy would come out to say that he had a lot of findings. What he would go on to say would move Hayley's family to tears. He found strong evidence of strangulation, partially manually from the hands, and partially from the necklace she was wearing at the time. The police officially released a statement later during that day, saying, "The victim and male student had a previous domestic/romantic relationship. The investigation determined that the person of interest had left the United States by an international air travel flight prior to the discovery of Hayley Anderson's deceased body." Orlando was officially named as the #1 suspect by the Binghamton Police Department, who noted that he had already fled to Nicaragua. They worried that he had just straight up gotten away with murder. The Broome County District Attorney, Steve Cornwell, was looking to quickly indict Orlando and file a warrant for his arrest as soon as possible. They would then pass that warrant on to the U.S. Department of State and use it to call upon the Nicaraguan government for Orlando's extradition to the United States. However, it would not be that simple, if you can call that simple. That following Monday, classes were canceled at Binghamton University for the senior nursing students due to Hayley's death. The university president and the Decker School of Nursing dean each released statements. They mourned Hayley's death and expressed their deepest condolences to her friends and family. Orlando, sometime after arriving back in Nicaragua, would go to the hospital for self-inflicted wounds, namely the head wound he received while trying to hang himself. He was then placed into a psychiatric hospital. Once he was declared to be the main suspect in the case, he was found, detained, and apprehended by the Nicaraguan National Police on March the 13th, that Tuesday, at the Hospital de León. He was then taken and brought to a prison in El Chipote, very near the capital of the country, Managua. Back in Broome County on March the 17th, Orlando was officially charged with second-degree murder in the killing of Hayley Anderson. With that charge, he could be facing up to a life in prison. A warrant was quickly issued for his arrest. However, there wasn't really anything to do with it, given that he wasn't within U.S. jurisdiction. All they could really do was hope for an extradition, which they may or may not receive. After debating for some time, Nicaragua rejected an extradition request from the United States. On the other hand, though, they did vow to take him to trial themselves. The district attorney, back on the U.S. side, Steve Cornwell, felt that a Nicaraguan trial would be the only way to seek justice in this case. The odd occurrence of a person being tried in another country for a crime that they committed in the U.S. is definitely weird, but it's not completely unheard of. It has happened in the past and is usually, to put simply, a giant fucking mess. In Nicaragua, Orlando was charged with femicide, a crime that doesn't even exist in the United States, being the crime of killing a woman one is in a relationship with. He was set to make his first court appearance in September of 2019. Unlike in the United States, there was to be no jury, and the verdict would be decided by the judge herself. About 20 of Hayley's family and friends watched the opening testimony via live stream back in the U.S. at the Broome County District Attorney's Office. They were greeted by the Spanish to English interpreter, who explained the legal arguments, while the witnesses from Binghamton dealt with a second interpreter in another room. The trial officially started on October 1st of 2019. Hayley's mother was the first witness, giving her testimony as to the obsessive behavior of Orlando. Looking into his eyes, she felt as if he was acting smug, or possibly even bored. Other friends, roommates, and exes also testified. Everything from Orlando's obsession, to his concerning behavior, to the tire slashing incident, to even more. The American prosecutors had zero authority throughout the entire thing. However, they did function in the role of witnesses and were able to give their testimonies via the interpreter. They spoke over Zoom in a room in the district attorney's office. They were only given 8 days of notice to prepare their testimonies prior to the trial. They testified about the surveillance footage, the crime scene, and the note they had found. During the testimonies, Orlando was wearing a blue prisoner's uniform, only speaking with his lawyer from time to time, and sometimes even sitting there and smiling in silence. 3 prison officers dressed in black stood behind him, carrying firearms. Orlando's defense attorney questioned whether or not the police conducted their early crime scene response properly, in order to verify whether the area was kept secure and the crime scene pristine. He went on to claim that, due to the influence of alcohol, Orlando was, functionally, temporarily insane at the time of the crime. I don't know about you guys, but I've never gotten so smashed that I would just straight up kill somebody. But who knows? Orlando claimed that he had no recollection of what had happened. However, that was completely unverifiable and not based on actual evidence. All they could confirm was that there was nothing currently wrong with Orlando's mental state. The judge left the room, and for an excruciating 90 minutes, everyone waited. The judge finally returned, stating that Orlando was officially guilty. Orlando was convicted on the charges of femicide and faced from 25 to 30 years in a Nicaraguan prison. It was declared that he would be sentenced to the maximum, that 30-year sentence. Orlando attempted to appeal in order to reduce his sentence, feeling that the maximum was too harsh. However, just recently in March of 2020, his appeal was flatly rejected. He still faces a second-degree murder charge in Broome County in New York, but it is very unlikely that he will ever be extradited. Orlando's friends feel the sentence is unjust. Some feel that he is completely innocent, while others feel that he was under the influence of some sort of drug. Either way, Orlando will remain in prison. He'll get nothing to eat but rice and beans in a heavily overcrowded facility. He may get to return to his life one day, but Hayley will not. Hayley's family doesn't necessarily feel good now that Orlando is behind bars, but they feel it will help them to move on from the incident. Thank you again for watching my videos. I hope you found it interesting. If you don't mind, leaving a like really helps the video to get seen by others, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more cases like this. If you'd like, I do have a Patreon, and you could support the channel on there. Speaking of which, a special shout out to my current top tier patrons: Kemi Lou, Kim Peak, Lux Alpaca, Charity, Skooky Maine, Foxlicity, Jackie, Lavender Wise, and Tresa Ferguson. As always, you guys are the best. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.